Hello and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and our communities across Scotland tonight. What might Donald Trump's tariffs mean for Scotland? We will get the latest. We'll focus on the environment too as the bids to find someone to run the deposit scheme for bottles gets underway. We hear why it's already working in Ireland.
We saw peaks of particularly plastic, wines and plastic bottles, peaks of over 60 plastic bottles per 500 metres of shore. And now, this autumn, the lowest level ever.
We will hear from a climate activist as we continue to feel the effects of Storm Ailwyn. Also tonight, Lewis is on sport. Lewis, what have you got for us?
Well, Amy, we'll get up to speed on all the latest transfer deadline day deals in Scottish football, including Lyle Cameron's move to Rangers on a pre-contract agreement for the summer.
Looking forward to that, and we will have the winner of the Young Traditional Scottish Musician of the Year right here in the studio. Hello, I'm Amy Irons and this is the News at 7. We start tonight with tariffs, a word that's got people talking around the world due to Donald Trump. He says he's going to impose them on his neighbours, such as Mexico and Canada, and warns they're on the way for the EU too. The UK might be in the crosshairs as well. America is one of Scotland's biggest trading partners. The First Minister says he's keen to avoid tariffs being imposed here.
This is a deeply unsettling moment for all of us. Now, obviously, we don't know any implications for Scotland. I've made it very clear that I want to make sure that we are protected from any tariffs, because I don't want to see good Scottish companies put at a disadvantage as a consequence of decisions of this type. And we'll obviously engage, as I've said we will engage, to make sure that's not the case.
Well, wherever tariffs are imposed, there is likely to be an impact on the Scottish economy. Let's speak to Colin Borland from the Federation of Small Business. Colin, thanks very much for joining us in the studio tonight.
My pleasure.
As we've been seeing, America is one of Scotland's biggest trading partners. So even though it might include the UK and Scotland, it might not at this stage. We don't really know what Trump's going to do. It's still an unsettling time for business, I'm going to imagine.
Yes, absolutely, because the US is the second biggest trading market for those small firms who do trade internationally after the EU. Something like 6 in 10 small businesses who trade internationally export to the US, and about a third import goods from there. So obviously firms who are in those markets are keeping a very close eye on this.
If it did indeed have an effect on the EU, if he brings tariffs in there, what kind of effect could that still have? A knock-on impact, I suppose, that ripple effect that it may have on Scottish businesses. What would it look like in real terms? Are we talking jobs, increased costs? What exactly would it mean?
I suppose, as you say, we don't know, because we don't know what it's going to look like. Is it going to be a blanket across the board, 20-25%? Would it be targeted on specific industries? So I think in terms of how that looks, that will determine largely what happens. I think, though, in terms of some of the other sort of knock-on impacts, is people looking at this at a time when we really need to be looking at new markets, might take one look at this and think, actually, this is too unpredictable and it's not worth the hassle. I'm not going to do it. And what that then means is that you're limiting your prospects for future domestic growth.
I think when people probably think about the probably most popular products that we export to America, they'll think of things like whiskey and salmon, but it goes a lot further than that in terms of the services that Scotland and the business that we will do with America. Well,
there's a full range of goods, and it tends to be the sorts of stuff that we produce tends to be at the premium, higher end of the market, so the price point is already higher. So if you're going to impose a blanket percentage tariff, then that has a disproportionate effect. I also think, the point that's been made today by various people that, the US doesn't have a trade deficit with us. They sell us more stuff than we sell them. So I'm not quite sure what the point would be, particularly when we're not doing things like dumping cheap electric vehicles onto international markets or cheap steel, or turning a blind eye to the chemicals that make up fentanyl going over the border or posing a threat to national security. We're not doing any of that. So I'm not entirely sure what the point of imposing tariffs on the UK would be.
Does the fact that Donald Trump can just be so unpredictable, does that mean it's really difficult for Scottish businesses to come up with any kind of plan? Because it's not like they're picking A or B. It could be absolutely anything when we're talking about Donald Trump.
I think uncertainty is always difficult, and you do sort of have to price that in. But I think, you know, the issues of what's going to happen here is something that we're just going to have to leave to our governments to sort out. You know, I mean, I'm not an expert in international diplomacy, probably quite rightly. Neither
am I. I don't think many of us would say we were, Colin.
Yeah, but you know, I think we need to leave that to the politicians and to arrive at a solution, get around the table and think, and use, you know, this is a man with famous Scottish connections. He's proud of his Scottish connections. He's got Scottish business interests. We need to, you know, he's a keen golfer. We need to use every single club in the bag when it comes to using those sort of pressure points to convince them that you know, it would be pointless to impose tariffs and hamper Scottish business.
The Scottish roots could be the ace card, as you say, Colin. Thanks very much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as ever, we would love to hear your thoughts on this story. What do you make of Trump's plans? Do let us know. Our email address is on screen for you now. It's news7@bbc.co.uk. And some of you have already been giving us your thoughts on this. Liam from Dumfries has been in touch with BBC Scotland and says the international community should boycott all US goods and services until he stops trying to bully the rest of the world. David from Johnston says we should realign ourselves with the EU, our biggest market and our partners for 50 years. Trump is the playground bully trying to steal our trainers. Here's a different viewpoint, saying I think Trump will be quite favourable towards us in the UK, especially due to his mother's links with Scotland. Well, it is football's deadline day, which we will get to later, but it's also deadline day for bids to run the deposit return scheme for bottles and cans in Scotland, England and Northern Ireland. The much delayed Scottish scheme has been merged into a UK-wide system, which is due to begin in October 2027. The UK government says it will select the deposit management organisation in April. We will hear from an environmental campaigner a little later on in the programme. But first to Ireland, which has just marked the first anniversary of its scheme. Kevin Keane was there and caught up with environmentalist Karen Dubowski.
So the law was passed, but then the first deadline was 1st of February, and then if you had old stock, you could still continue. So in reality, take it as 1st of April. And by autumn of 2024, a few months later, we already had a massive reduction in marine litter of the deposit on return items.
And how do you quantify that reduction? How have you come about observing it?
So Coastwatch has been doing coastal surveys, so not the rivers, but the coastal surveys since 1987. Basically, we have a data flow with counted drinks, separated counted drinks container per 500 meters of shore, internationally from 1989. And we saw peaks of particularly plastic, wines and plastic bottles, peaks of over 60 plastic bottles per 500 meters of shore. And now, this autumn, the lowest level ever.
Well, we will be returning to environmental matters in just a moment. Thank you very much for joining us on tonight's News at 7. We have plenty more for you to come in the programme, including the winner of Scotland's Young Traditional Musician of the Year will be here live to tell us all about her win.
We start the week with low pressure, but by midweek, high pressure takes over. That means some sunshine. I'll have a full forecast later in the programme.
Well, speaking of the weather, cast your mind back just over a week ago now when Storm Aowen battered Scotland, causing widespread devastation and a major clean-up operation in its wake. A special programme airs tonight looking back at how the storm swept across the country, bringing with it those 100-mile-an-hour winds. As part of the programme, our reporter Morgan Spence went to the Botanics in Edinburgh to hear from staff there about the devastation and damage caused to the plants and trees, including Edinburgh's tallest tree.
This is the loss of an old friend. We are looking here at the remains of the Himalayan cedar, once stood at 30 metres high. Big clear-up operation required. Heartbreaking for our visitors. Tallest tree in Edinburgh, and it is no longer. We have around 25 to 30 trees have fallen, have come down, been blown down, plus at least another 30, probably more, that are damaged, and they'll be assessed.
Tom's up in the tree. He's set up what we call a rigging line, so that's the line that he's going to use to lower the pieces down. He secured the branch off that's damaged. It's really sad when you come in and you see this sort of damage. Trees do come and go, it's like anything in life, I guess. But we're going to do our best to work it out, prune the trees, make everything safe so that the public can come in and see what's going on again.
And of course, it wasn't just the trees were affected by the storm, it was also these structures. Around about 200 panes of glass taken out or slipped. The issue is, of course, that the cold weather can get in, the rain can get in, and the wind can get in. One of my big worries is that the intensity and frequency of these extreme weather events is increasing. The cedar behind me is a visual impact of the impact of climate change. And as visitors come into the garden, they can see that, and it gets them thinking about what's happening to our planet, what's happening to our natural heritage. We'll look at the timber, and if some of the timber can be used to make furniture or whatever, then we'll do so. The rest of the stuff will get chipped and will go back into the garden. With the loss of trees, there also comes planting opportunities. And so we're always seeking to enhance the collections, bring in new species. So where there once was a magnificent tree, there will be another magnificent tree or another magnificent shrub.
Well, Laura Young, otherwise known as Less Waste. Laura is an environmental scientist and climate campaigner and joins us now. Laura, thanks for joining us on the programme tonight. Just a few things to discuss today, obviously. So we're reflecting on Storm Eo in the programme tonight. As a climate campaigner, just how concerning is it when we've seen this storm, which was described as a once-in-a-generational storm? And what do you think Scotland should be doing to try and prepare for these types of weather events?
It's really concerning, and it is something that we need to be prepared for. And if we cast our minds back, this is not the first storm that's happened in recent months. Actually, if we just look back to Storm Babette, many people will remember the devastation, particularly because that also had very heavy rainfall and flooding that was associated. So we absolutely need to get prepared and make places more climate resilient. That means people need to understand a bit more of the risk associated, look up where they live on the SEPA, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency's flood maps, work out if they are at risk of things like flooding and look at what they maybe need to do to get prepared. But we also need local authorities to be thinking how we can make places more climate resilient and actually look at some of the extreme weather that is definitely becoming more intense and more frequent as we are seeing climate changing here in Scotland, and look at how we can be preparing places, because we have done a lot of construction and building and put a lot of concrete and homes in places that they maybe shouldn't be. So we need to look at how we can be engineering our way out, but also using nature to actually help protect, particularly some of our coasts and some of our low-lying regions that are susceptible to flooding and very intense storms when they come typically off the west coast as well.
Yeah, because obviously different areas affected differently, as we did see over the last week or so. The other news today, Laura, is the fact it's the deadline to bid to run the deposit return scheme. Do you feel this is well overdue? It's been in the pipeline. We've been talking about this for a number of years now.
Yeah, this is a big déjà vu moment. The Scottish scheme was originally put forward to be put in place around 2023, but of course it was knocked back by Westminster with this argument that we should be doing it as a four nations approach. And now we have 2027 as the timeline for when this will come into place. And this is something that is very needed. We have heard a little bit about Ireland and their scheme and how it's made a real difference in terms of litter. And that's definitely something we also have an issue with here in Scotland and the UK. The Marine Conservation Society survey beaches every year and find that 97% of beaches have litter associated to drinks containers. And in Scotland, we spend £1 million a week dealing with litter. So for those reasons alone, we should definitely be trying to tackle this to incentivise people taking their cans to be recycled properly. But also, recycling is much more cost efficient when you compare it to waste incineration, which is where an increasing amount of our waste is going in Scotland. So even just with the economics of the argument, we should be doing this. And of course, we are trailing behind. There are plenty of countries around the world. Ireland has recently joined countries like Germany and Sweden and others to be doing deposit return schemes. And it is something that works easily, and it's something that is accessible. And many people, many listeners from this evening will remember back in the 60s and 70s where we had deposit return style schemes with fizzy pop glass bottles where you could take it back to your shop. So it's not a new technology or a new scheme whatsoever, but we are definitely lagging behind and need to be getting something in place for cost savings and, of course, for the environmental benefits that it brings too.
Absolutely. Well, we've just been looking at the difference that it's made in Ireland. Laura Young, thanks very much for joining us on the programme for all of that.
Thank you.
And you can watch that special programme looking back at Storm Aowen and its impact here on BBC One Scotland this evening at 8:30. It will also be available to watch on iPlayer. Let's get a roundup of the stories making the BBC News app in Scotland today, shall we? And a Fife nurse who was suspended after complaining about sharing a changing room with a transgender colleague has begun giving evidence at an employment tribunal. It's expected to last 10 days. A section of the M8 motorway was closed after reports of a man on the road with a weapon. Police were called just before 9 o'clock this morning, with officers then closing Junction 6. Rock legends AC/DC have announced they will play their first Scottish concert in a decade this summer. The group will play 12 dates across 10 countries before finishing up at Murrayfield Stadium in Edinburgh in August. Well, for more on all of these stories, you can scan that QR code on your screen now and it'll take you straight to the BBC Scotland News app, where there is more for you, including why an animal welfare group has suggested a possible cat ban in some areas of Scotland to protect wildlife. I'm sure many of you shaking your heads if you're a cat fan. Well, in other news today, Glasgow City Council is urging the owners of thousands of empty homes to sell or rent out their properties to help combat the city's housing crisis. Councillor Rory Kelly, convener for housing at the local authority, says letters have been sent to owners of more than 2,500 vacant properties offering support to bring homes back into use. Our reporter Hope Webb has been out to meet Rory.
So we're here outside the city chambers and I'm standing here with Councillor Rory Kelly. You are the council's housing convener. We're talking about empty homes. There are thousands of them across the city. The council has taken a unique move of writing to some of those owners. Talk us through why.
Yeah, so we've got approximately 2,500 empty homes in the city, but as everybody knows, Scotland, the UK and sort of the wider Western Europe are going through a housing crisis. We have the opportunity to bring a lot of houses back into use quite quickly and at a much lower cost than building new houses or doing extensive renovations. So this is just one way that we're trying to get owners to engage with us so that we can signpost them in the right direction to help us to help the people in Glasgow who need a home. And do you think that letter writing could be effective because the owners don't have to come forward, they don't have to sell those properties? No, I think it's a first protocol really just to highlight the issues that we have, but also to highlight the areas where people can be helped. A lot of times homes are vacant through no real fault of the owner. Maybe they've inherited it, maybe they don't have the financial resources to do the renovation themselves, so we can signpost them in the right direction where they can get either that advice, support, or where they can look to sell the property so that somebody can use it. Because the reality is that there is a housing emergency in Glasgow. One was announced back in 2023. How desperate is this situation? I mean, it is a desperate situation, especially for those who are looking for housing. I mean, we've also got the issue with rents increasing, the price of purchasing for especially first-time buyers increasing with the increase in interest rates. We've declared a housing emergency, so we have to act like it's an emergency. We have to do things differently than we've done it before, and we need to really make inroads into this problem. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. No problem, thank you very much.
Well, still to come, we have the weather with Christopher, and we will be hearing from the winner of the Young Scottish Musician of the Year, who will be live with us here in the studio. But first of all, it's sport with Lewis. And Lewis, Scotland fans, we were celebrating on Saturday, weren't we?
Oh yes, we were, Amy. What a weekend, what a start to the Six Nations. And that's where we start the sport tonight, with rugby. And this man here, Hugh Jones, who was at the heart of Scotland's opening Six Nations win against Italy with his hat-trick of tries. But the ante is certainly being upped big time on Sunday at Murrayfield, indeed, against Ireland, who the Scots haven't actually beaten since 2017. Well, there were plenty of positives to take from beating the Italians, according to former Scotland fullback Hugo Southwell, but he also believes improvements need to be made if Gregor Townsend's side are to get that long-awaited victory over the Irish.
I think we got a bit too loose. I think we tried to play a bit too much rugby in the middle third. And I think we could have mixed our game up a bit better and put a few little kicks in behind. They were rushing up in defence, trying to put us under pressure, and we sort of played into their hands a bit. Hugh Jones said it as well afterwards, after scoring a hat-trick. He said we need to be a lot better, and I'm sure they will be. You feel that if it's going to happen, it's due to happen now, and it's probably our best opportunity with how we've been playing. You know, Ireland are a brilliant side, but there is moments when there is a few chinks in the armour, especially in their defence recently. You know, they conceded points at the weekend, which they haven't done for a while. So there is an opportunity, but it's going to take a huge performance from Scotland.
Well, in Scottish football, it is the winter transfer window deadline at 11 o'clock tonight. And I'm pleased to say we've got BBC Sports Scotland reporter Jane Lewis with us to talk about all of the deals and what has been happening. Jane, you can get us up to speed. First of all, any noteworthy deals to talk about?
Yeah, it's bubbling away gently. Simmering, I think, probably is the way to describe it. Rangers kicking things off. They have signed Lyle Cameron, but Rangers fans won't be seeing him at Ibrox anytime soon. They may have signed him, and that's on a pre-contract agreement, so he will join the Ibrox club in the summer, not in this transfer window. Aberdeen have been fairly busy. Of course, their recent form would tell you, and their manager has been pretty open. They want to strengthen their squad. They have done that today. They signed the Dutch defender Mats Noester. He was at Ferencvaros, more recently been playing his football in Denmark. A couple of signings for Hearts as well. Harry Milne from Partick Thistle, that's gone through in the last wee while. Motherwell have added yet another goalkeeper, Callum Ward. He's on a short-term contract. And Championship side Falkirk, this maybe is a bit of a strange one. One of their most influential players, Callum Morrison, he has left. He's left to join Lingfield. People might be surprised at that because, of course, Falkirk are pushing for promotion.
They certainly are. Well, those are some of the deals that have happened. Jane, you won't need any reminder that this is a long night ahead. There's a few hours yet to go. Yeah. What deals could we still see? You've got a long night ahead.
The coffee's on in the office, I can tell you. Yeah, listen, you would think Celtic will want to get in the act. They'll want to sign a striker, won't they? They've lost Kyogo, who was a very influential player for them on the park. Brendan Rodgers said that he knew he was leaving. So you would think that there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes to try and get a striker in. They will certainly want to do that. They'll also, you would think, be looking at a left back, because Alex Valle, who was there, went back to Barcelona, his parent club. They've put him out on loan again to Como. So Celtic certainly maybe struggling in that position. They want to try and get Kieran Tierney in. He is joining from Arsenal in the summer, but Arsenal said no to him joining in this window. So the likes of Jeffrey Stroop from Crystal Palace, he has been mentioned. He's a bit of a utility player. He can play in several places over the park, so that would be right up Celtic Street, you would think, for maybe filling a couple of those gaps, and that certainly is a potential signing. Interestingly enough, they tried to get Lennon Miller. They made an inquiry over him, and Motherwell said we don't want to sell him right now. We spoke about Aberdeen signing a defender. They also want to sign a striker as well to try and look for those goals. Odi Bada is a name in the frame. Nothing confirmed yet, but as you say, the time is, where are we?
Yeah,
just after 7 o'clock.
Exactly.
So we've got 3 hours and a bit to go. So
a lot can change.
A lot can change, and you know it.
And the best place to keep up to speed with all that is, of course, on the website, isn't it, Jane? Because there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks very much, Jane. OK, now, just before we wrap up, let's acknowledge that the Championship has a new leader in the shape of Scott Brown's Ayr United. The Honest Men scored twice late on to beat Hamilton Accies and move 1 point clear of Falkirk at the summit, although the Bairns do have a game in hand. And the manager, Scott Brown, praised the unity of his team.
Character, it's desire and the players as well, but it's also a squad. It shows you the togetherness of the squad as well. The lads come on, you can see them celebrating with the subs that come on. And no, we had that strength and depth, so for us it was great.
And remember, you can check out the BBC Sports Scotland website, as I mentioned, for much more all about the transfer deadline day indeed, but also including all the goals from the weekend games in the Championship, League One and League Two. So yes, Amy, it has been a busy old day in the world of sport indeed. But we love it.
What a signing we have on the 7 here. Wait for this one, because finally tonight, Ellie Beaton has been named BBC Radio Scotland's Young Traditional Musician of the Year at the Celtic Connections Festival. Originally from the small village of Rothinorman in Aberdeenshire, Ellie hopes her win will put the culture and traditions of the Doric dialect, in which she sings, on the map. Let's have a listen. We were just building up the suspense for you there. I'm very pleased to say that Ellie Beaton joined us in the studio. Ellie, congratulations. You must be absolutely over the moon.
Thank you very much. I am. I still can't quite believe that it's all happened, and it's been such a busy day today here, but just very happy to be here.
Because it was just yesterday, wasn't it? So talk us through how you found out and just the sense of occasion, I suppose, how you found it.
Yeah, so we did the 6 finalist sets, and then we awaited for the result of the final, and it was all pretty fast-paced, and then I was the winner. Very exciting.
I mean, it was an absolutely beautiful performance. We just got a little sample of it there. But did you have any idea that you were going to win? Did you feel confident? Because the standard was really high, wasn't it?
I think it could have went to any of us. You know, there's some of my closest pals are in the final, and we're all as good as one another. So it was really whatever it could be.
Yes, but you're just absolutely delighted. Why is it so important, Ellie, that you sing in your Doric dialect, and you I suppose it's a nod to your heritage? Why is that still so important for you?
I think the language is such a big part of my life, and it's something I grew up speaking since I was, born. So to continue that, especially with everything, funding being cut with languages, it's just really important to keep continuing it. And the Young Traditional Musician of the Year finals was just a great chance to share my local language with a wider audience.
And we will be watching what's next for you, because there's an album in the making, I believe.
There is. It's a very long-awaited album, and it's in the very early stages of planning, but hopefully we'll make something of it soon.
We cannot wait to hear it. Ellie Beaton, thanks very much for joining us on the programme. And you can catch up on all the music and songs of Celtic Connections on the BBC iPlayer and on BBC Sounds. And now we can find out what the weather's looking like with our Christopher.
It's improving, actually.
Oh, good.
Yes, we like that, don't we? It's a bit of a grey start to the week. Sunshine by Wednesday, Laura. Thanks very much indeed. Amy.
No, it's all right. Don't worry.
Some lovely photos coming to us today, actually. Beautiful, bright start there in the borders, but after that it was pretty cloudy. Windy on the west coast, as captured by Dean, and then that rain moving in. And it's still with us now. Let's take a look at what's happening over the next few days, because as I mentioned to Amy, we had low pressure to start the week, but as we head through towards midweek, high pressure moves in from the south, taking over, quietening things down, drying things up, and there should be some winter sunshine to be had as well. First thing tomorrow, though, we've still got a lot of the rain that's moving in tonight with us. And because of that, a Met Office yellow warning through Dumfries and Galloway. There's the warning, there's the rain. So it's a soggy start across central and southern Scotland first thing tomorrow. And windy from the southwest as well. But it's a mild morning, 8-9 Celsius. Further north, that rain should have cleared through across parts of Aberdeenshire in towards the far north and northwest. But you can see a number of showers moving in here. And once again, still quite breezy around the west coast, not the strength of wind that we had today, though. So as we head through the course of Tuesday, that rain still with us across central and southern parts. It will be a wet morning, but into the afternoon that should clear, and then a drier, brighter start of weather. But you can see further showers moving in as well, and actually temperatures dropping through the day. Now, looking ahead towards midweek, high pressure that I mentioned takes over, moving in from the south, settling things down, so that means it should be largely dry and bright. There'll still be a few showers around, coming in on a westerly wind. Temperatures down a notch, but in the sunshine shouldn't feel too bad, highs of 7 or 8. And then Thursday, generally it's dry, lots of winter sunshine around. Still windy in the northwest with low pressure nearby, but really it's high pressure that's ruling the roost. Looking ahead, Saturday, we have this weather front here that could just move in and bring a bit of rain, but beyond that, it looks like high pressure takes over again. So a lot of dry weather to come. This is Friday in detail with high pressure with us. It's going to be a dry and sunny day, but a breeze coming off the North Sea giving quite a cool feel. There's that weather front trying to move in on Saturday. That could bring a few outbreaks of rain. Its exact position still a little open to doubt. It's one to watch. And you can see on the outlook, really from midweek onwards, sunny symbols. We like that, don't we? But temperatures coming down a notch or two. That's the forecast, Amy.
We do like that indeed, Christopher. Thanks very much. And thanks to you at home as well. I will be back with you tomorrow. I hope to see you then. Bye-bye.